Such a close fight. I could just imagine the after party that we talked about Thursday. What a different after party it would have been if it had gone the other way.
For sure. Again, obviously, win or lose, I love doing what I do. So, the first time I lost the fight, that was a hard one to take. But the second time I lost the fight, I realized that the sun will rise another day. And that's kind of the mentality you have to come into it because, part of game day, part of the importance of being to the best of your ability is believing what you do in the gym can translate in cage time and when it really matters on game day. So, did what I needed to do. It was a close fight, but, there's tough individuals that I'll be facing every single time. And he's hungry. He's a very capable individual and trying to knock my block off. But this big block can take a licking.
Showed a lot of heart out there, but I mean, how hurt were you? Because it did seem there were moments that this fight might be over.
Yeah, no, I never lost my bearings. What ends up happening is because of my unorthodox stance. Sometimes if I'm not in an athletic stance and I fall into something, someone can catch me. It happens in training sometimes, but at no point did I lose consciousness. At no point was there a flash knockout. It was just literally, let me see my surroundings. What do I got here? Okay. And, another aspect, too, is that he's a big dude, as you can see. So when the UFC weighs you just before you fight, I weighed in about 206, and he was about 223. So in regards to the difference, but at the same time, I felt stronger than he did, especially more athletic in certain positions. And part of that is because of how green he is as an athlete, right? One of the things he's been calling me out before this fight started, and I like this fight because in many ways he's as green as I mentioned, and this is a perfect time to meet someone that who's hungry, who's obviously has a lot of great wins and even great fights in general, and has a lot of hype behind him. But he said he was gonna be the first person to finish me. Instead, he lost to the first ring boy ever.
You said he weighed 223. Do they tell you his weight as well, or is it just something?
No, yeah. So the UFC basically weighs you just before you fight when you come in, and I weighed in again with some of my clothes or whatever about 208 pounds, but minus of what I was wearing, it was probably about 205, 206, where I would imagine the 3-4 pounds on the same thing as him. He showed up at 223 when he weighed in because there was a little cheat sheet that I kind of looked. I peeked, right? So they what's it called? It said my weight. Or he wrote down my weight, and I look right over at 223. I'm like, oh god damn. But then once we clasped together, I just felt stronger, just in a more athletic stance. I mentioned it before, but there's this old joke where these two guys are walking down an alley, and they see two guys in front of them, and he basically says, "Oh my God, there's two of them." Right? Because there's two of us. But part of it, the idea is, again, the idea that, believing in my ability, believing what the magic I can do in training, and the importance of just kind of putting it all together on game day.
Have you been able to soak in this win? I know it's been a dream of yours to fight for the UFC in Toronto, and you get the win. I'm sure you're just happy to hear your name called with a close decision like that, but have you been able to take this in right now?
Yeah, no, again, it's one of those situations, the further it goes from the fight, the more you're able to kind of soak it in. Obviously, right now, it's a relief. As mentioned earlier, I have an after party at the Pint, and, it would have been a different atmosphere in some capacity if I didn't get my hand raised. But, I'm going to soak it in with a lot of people that I love, a lot of people that I know, and, I might not remember everything for the rest of the night, but we'll put it all together when I watch the fights with my coaches. They love and hate me right now because I did take a couple of licks, and especially when I got Invicta 33 coming up next week, I got to put on a little makeup on, and especially if I'm going to protect the moneymaker.
As you talked about, this was a close fight. Were you confident when the cards were being read off? Were you nervous?
Definitely nervous. Again, part of it is the situation where I thought I almost was so far ahead on the first round that sometimes you lose focus when you're pulling away that far. And sometimes it takes a punch in the face, like, oh yeah, we're doing this thing, right? You know what I mean? And I think that's what it was. I was so successful at what I was doing at the beginning, kind of doing my own unorthodox style, that in many ways you kind of like, oh, well, it's working so well, let me try something else. No, it's working, so do that. And that's what I kind of did. Moreover, I felt so much more athletic, and I felt so much more, comfortable in the clinch. I should have done a little bit more of that, I think, especially pushing it against the cage like I did in my last fight with Trevor Smith, who was, again, a D1 wrestler, and I was able to out-clinch him. So, I'm going to learn from this fight, and I'm going to grow, and at the end of the day, 17-2 sounds a lot better than 16-2.
You have a lot of stuff outside the cage in terms of, you've got the podcast, the ring boy duties and everything else. When are you looking to return? Because I know there's a lot of stuff outside the cage that keeps you busy.
I'm going to take the rest of the year, obviously, to grow and learn. And more importantly, as mentioned, my next fight is not against necessarily one man. It's against the stigma of medical cannabis, and that includes pushing through with my therapeutic use exemption for USADA to be able to medicate as prescribed by my medical doctor and my medical cannabis provider, Solus Health Network. So again, at this point, I was denied going into this fight, and I'm put at a competitive disadvantage compared to my athletes who can medicate with a first-line medication like Vicodin, for instance. So again, not saying that Eryk Anders did, but if he had Vicodin in his system, he'd be totally fine, where if I had cannabis in my system, I would be suspended for months, if not years. And, you don't have to take my word for it. Take the Center for the CCS, the Canadian Center for Ethics in Sports, that lobbied last year to remove cannabis in the prohibited list. What it means under the prohibited list is that it is at the same level as HGH and steroids. Again, whatever you think of cannabis, it is not the same. And what I'm asking is not to medicate on game day. I'm asking to medicate all the way up to weigh-ins, wake up during my fight, compete, and start medicating again. The reason that, and again, just as a competitive disadvantage that I find myself in, and also, to put it on an even field that other athletes can use in regards to opting out for their own first-line medications. I have what's called bilateral neuropathic pains. It's essentially nerve damage. And what you saw today is, an example of what I have to live with afterwards in regards to the quality of life that I kind of go into. Again, huge believer in USADA, clean sport, and one of the most proudest moments is when the UFC partnered with USADA. That was one of my proudest moments as an athlete, as a UFC fighter, because the UFC partnered with such a prominent anti-doping agency, and again, believe in everything that they do, but it's this one aspect in regards to still keeping cannabis on the prohibited list that is an outdated mindset. And, again, this is not just my fight, this is for every other Canadian athlete moving forward.
You think with the fact that recreational, I know it's different, recreational pot being legal now in Ontario, you think that may sort of open a few eyes in terms of USADA's perspective?
Hopefully. So going into deeper in that, beyond recreation, because recreation is actually just a change in the criminal code in Canada, where medical cannabis is a fundamental Canadian right for all Canadians because it is attached to healthcare. And that's the bigger issue. This is a fundamental Canadian right installed in me, in the Charter of Rights and Freedom, but every Canadian athlete and every Canadian moving forward. So this is not just about me, this is bigger than myself, and this is about what I want to do for others, because I want to take my platform and run with it.
But your take on recreational pot, like for example, I know Nick Diaz has been in the headlines for this before. Your take on athletes using pot from a recreational standpoint.
So yes, what I would argue in the sense that athletes, again, because cannabis is under prohibition in the U.S., athletes and patients and individuals are self-medicating because they are not allowed to do it under prescribed by doctors. Canada, for the last decade, has been able, again, to medicate. And that's why I urge all other individuals not just to rely on recreational cannabis, because the aspect you're possibly self-medicating, and it's better to do that with your doctor, because medication and medicine is a very personal thing that you should learn and empower yourself as a patient. So beyond recreational, and I would still kind of fight with that word recreational, especially when it comes to athletes and potential individuals that are self-medicating without, or self-medicating under the current prohibition that the U.S. finds itself in.
Specific to tonight, how much different would this fight have looked if you were able to?
Well, at this point, we won't know because I'm not allowed to, right? But I think the difference is just in the proof in regards to the quality of care or the quality of life that I find afterwards. I have nerve damage that I already feel. Again, during that fight, I had different stingers and radiating pain throughout, but it's something I have to, again, bite on my mouth guard and just push through. It's a competitive disadvantage that I currently find myself in, but anything worth fighting is hard, long, and it's a fight I'm willing to take.
With
Elias,
CBD
Elias,
oil, CBD oil, there are properties that it also cannabis. Is that something you're currently taking? Because that is allowed.
CBD, yes, and it is, but one has to be careful in regards to CBD because it's actually an extract in regards to it. But moreover, what's it called? And to have the true properties of cannabis, you have to have that chemical reaction in regards to THC. That's where the real medical aspect is in regards to what I suffer from neuropathic pain. If you want to do something with CBDs, that's more in regards to epilepsy, that's more Parkinson's. Those are the areas that those have found in regards to different studies for rats, et cetera, which is a blueprint for others moving forward in regards to medical aspects. Again, THC is what works best for me, and again, I'm going to keep pushing through until I'm able to do it.
Elias, I think you said afterwards that you were inviting Eryk to maybe chill out with you after maybe smoke. Do you think he's going to take you up on that offer?
We'll see. Yeah. What's it called? I'm not gonna. Hey. There's a lot of cameras here. I don't know if you know this. What's it called? Again, he is a true competitor through and through. He hits like a brick, shit brick house. It's an honor to step in the cage with every individual that I have. The ones that have beaten me, the ones that I've beaten, and I said beyond that, I'd love to help him on the mats too, in any way, shape, or form. He has a real bright future ahead of him if he's able to, grow as a martial artist. What he's been able to accomplish already in such a short amount of time, and especially if you look in the aspect of him, he's fought 4 times in the last year. Obviously, he's game as a mofo, so he needs that time to grow as a martial artist. He's an athlete through and through. You can look at his career as a linebacker in a previous life, and obviously Bama, and his story as a linebacker in general, and the potential of going to CFL, et cetera, et cetera. But it was an honor to step in the cage with him, and it would be an honor to help him get his hand raised next fight.
What's it like to now be on your longest winning streak?
Repeat that one more time.
What's it like to now be on your longest winning streak since March 2015?
Yeah, no, it feels great. I'm a little bitter because I think I beat Brad Tavares, but it's okay. That's probably why I won't fight in Vegas again. No, I'm just kidding. Half joking. Point being, they just don't like me. I don't know. Okay, so just kidding aside, it feels great. Being 8-2 in the UFC is a great feeling. It just allows me to believe more in myself and my ability and my unorthodox stance.
I guess if we're being entirely serious, will you fight in Vegas again or no?
There's one of the shining aspects in regards to where Vegas finds itself is it has a very progressive stance in regards to cannabis. Part of my process in regards to TUE, even when USADA grants me my therapeutic use exemption, there'll be different commissions that say yay or nay, and I'm only going to fight places that respect my fundamental Canadian right to medicate as prescribed by my doctor. Boom. Os.